What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Well, in today's video, we are covering Luna Classic as some very interesting things are happening and the countdown does begin for what could be the rebirth of Luna Classic as a whole, or at least in my opinion. Now, just a couple days ago, we talked about this proposal 4159, which did pass, which was going to allow for the enabling of a 1.2% burn and the re-enabling of delegation and staking. Now, I told you guys this was extremely important. The main thing that has been driving the price of Luna Classic down, of course, and what started this whole thing was the total supply reaching numbers that were just an absolute mess, right? And so if there is something that could kind of start to work on reversing those damaging effects, then we of course could see the value being brought back to Luna Classic as a whole. Now, what's very interesting is that just today we actually got news of what could be a very realistic timeline for when we could see the burning actually going into effect based off of the current knowledge that the team has. So, EK826's timeline is the most realistic view of the path forward. At the moment, we're giving TFL a 10-day opportunity to acknowledge the result of the vote and decide if they will implement the changes required. So, of course, going forward, they need TFL kind of, sort of, to work with them in order to pass this quickly, right? If TFL acknowledges that proposal 4159, of course, with the staking, the delegation, and the burn, then we can do this really quickly. They can make the changes, make the implementation, and then the upgrade could happen within the next 2 weeks, right? If TFL decides not to reply, or they decide that they don't want anything to do with this project, of course, then it would take a lot more time, hence the countdown begins. Now, in terms of TFL responding, we actually did get news just today, earlier today, that they are in talks right now about V21. It says here that, yes, this would require TFL to do it, of course, the upgrade, as we mentioned. We are actually in talks with multiple members of TFL right now about V21. I imagine the JSON wouldn't be a big deal, but we will see. So at first we were expecting, no response at all, but at this point they are in talks with multiple members of TFL, which means that this definitely could be expedited and this upgrade could happen sooner rather than later. Now, of course, that is not guaranteed, but we will just have to see. Now, even if TFL decides, we don't want anything to do with this, well, there are still options here. Under the scenario in which you do say TFL give a negative response, like, no, we're good, or they don't say anything, they just go ghost from this point forward, we would then see the community coordinate a response. Now, if everything from that point forward does go well, right, we get this community coordinated response, the delegators do continuously put over 66% of their voting power into this thing. On best case scenario, through mid-September, we would see the tax enabled, which would implement that 1.2% burn, which would finally start to bring down the supply, especially on many of the on-chain trades that we would see. Now, of course, there are still talks about things like CZ from Binance and how he mentioned that he wouldn't be necessarily against implementing a burn function and all of these things, but I'm not necessarily too worried about anything outside of Luna Classic right now and what's on chain. I'm not worried about what CZ's talking about. I'm not worried about what all the FUD is going on. I am more focused on, okay, how do we go forward with getting this burn at least on chain, right? We saw the other day that there are over 33 projects currently getting prepared to deploy on Luna Classic. So we need to start making sure that when these projects get deployed, when traction starts coming to the blockchain itself, that this burn itself is implemented already, so we can start to have mutual benefits. Those projects, they can launch, they can get traction, but we can also be seeing the supply getting brought down from this burn. So what is the fastest way to do this? Of course, best case scenario is TFL does go ahead and make the upgrades and make things easy. If they decide not to, we will have to create a community coordinated response. They will have to make their own TERRA station, which would be a little bit of a holdup. Of course, that is not something you do just like that. And then we would have to see the delegators and the voting power over 66%. We would need to see the community voting and all this long process, okay? So the thing to be on the lookout for right now is how do we go forward throughout the next 10 business days? The countdown begins in deciding, is TFL in or is TFL out? If TFL doesn't want anything to do with it, we're going to take the long road. If they're all good with it and they'll make the upgrade, we could see this thing happen within the next, 10 to 20 days roughly. And that could be the big advancement that we need to finally see some growth from Luna Classic, especially in terms of inherent value. Of course, if we do look at something simply just like the price, it's not really been reacting to all this news, right? It's been staying flat because everyone doesn't necessarily care about news. No one really cares about the good news, the bad news. Again, they're more focused on what brings more value to Luna Classic as a whole. The inherent inherent value comes from the idea that we get the supply down, which reverses those adverse and those negative effects that we saw from earlier this year that created this mess to begin with. Okay, so pay very close attention to how this thing goes over the next 10 days. I will update you guys as the information comes out, news comes out, talks come out between the members and the team, and if anything important does happen, tune in as I will be updating you guys as soon as possible. But with that said, that's going to be about it for today's video. Of course, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, you can always let me know easily and simply by smashing the like button so more people see the video and subscribing to the channel so that if I post another video, you will see it yourself. But with that said, that's about it, and I will see you all next time. Peace.